What if the universe itself was a giant information processing system with plasma acting as its mind, essentially a form of non human intelligence? This provocative question invites us to look at the cosmos not just as a collection of inert matter, but as a dynamic system capable of processing information. In exploring this idea, we of course turn to plasma, the fourth state of matter, which is by far the dominant state within the universe. In fact, plasma makes up 99.9% of the observable universe, quite unlike the relatively rare solids, liquids, and gases we encounter in our daily lives. But in space, plasma is abound. It is found lighting the stars, filling interstellar and intergalactic space, and in the space filaments that connect the universe. Even though plasma is found primarily in space, doesn't mean we don't see it here on Earth. We experience it in the form of lightning and the auroras, sometimes even the form of an orb or plasmoid. On top of that, plasma appears in high energy laboratory experiments like fusion reactors and is currently driving many areas of research and technology. Given plasma's ubiquity and unique properties, I pose a bold central question. Could plasma itself be an aware information processing system? Could it even have a form of consciousness? We will step through some fundamental concepts, starting with the nature of information in physical systems, and then examine plasma in light of that. Along the way, we will see evidence of plasma transmitting signals, self organizing into complex structures, and responding to its environment in surprising ways. But piece by piece, we will assemble a logical argument that leads to a very compelling conclusion. This video for sure is inquisitive, and I would even say that it is speculative, but the speculation is based on science, as you will see. Let us begin by understanding what it means for a physical system to process information. In simple terms, information is the pattern of organization in a system. It's the signals and states that can be transmitted, stored, or processed. A classic example is DNA, the molecular blueprint of life. DNA stores biological information in the sequence of four bases: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, which encodes the instructions to build and regulate an organism. This genetic information can be copied or transmitted to new cells and be expressed to produce proteins. Another example is the nervous system. Neurons transmit information both electrically and chemically, sending signals along their length to neighboring cells. In neuroscience, a neuron conveys information through its dendrites, which receive input or signals from other neurons, and then the axon carries the electrical impulses that transmit signals to the next neuron. In essence, the firing pattern found in neurons is information encoding everything from the touch on your skin to the memory in your brain. Information also permeates the non living physical world. Waves are a prime example of information carriers. A simple radio wave carries music or voice by modulating its amplitude or frequency, a process by which a base waveform is varied to encode a message. The receiving antenna detects these variations and decodes the information. Likewise, a beam of light and an optical fiber can carry digital data across the internet, and sound waves in air can carry information of spoken words to your ears. In all cases, the key idea is that a pattern, whether a sequence of DNA bases, a series of neural spikes, or a modulated wave, represents information, and physical systems are capable of propagating and transforming these patterns. Given these examples, we can outline some criteria for an information processing system. It should support distinguishable states or signals. It should allow signals to propagate or be stored. And often it would include feedback or responses that modify the system based on incoming information. With this framework in mind, we now turn to plasma. While it is often overlooked, plasma's behavior consists of a dynamic interaction of charged particles and electromagnetic fields, and it makes it a prime candidate for processing information in ways similar to biological systems. Now that we understand what information is, does plasma support structures that can transmit and process data? Does it store memory of disturbances or adjust in response, analogous to feedback? In this next section, we will argue yes, yes, it does. Plasma is a natural at information processing. As mentioned, plasma is extremely dynamic, where charged particles interact collectively with long range electric and magnetic fields. These interactions give rise to a variety of waves and organized motions within plasma. Wave phenomena are so fundamental to a plasma's behavior that one of the defining characteristics of a plasma is that it must be able to support collective oscillations. Disturbances can propagate through plasma rather than being immediately dampened by collision. Because plasma's electrons and ions move in tandem with electromagnetic fields, a fluctuation in one region can travel outward as a wave, influencing distant regions. This means plasma inherently allows information transfer. A change at point A can send a signal to point B via a plasma wave. For example, an oscillation of electrons relative to ions can travel as an ion acoustic wave. This is analogous to a sound wave in air, where particles and fields oscillate together. Plasma can support many wave modes, such as alpha waves and magnetosonic waves, each carrying disturbances across the system. One striking example of plasma information transfer is dusty plasmas. These systems support dust acoustic waves. These are low frequency compressional waves that propagate through the dust component of the plasma. The dust grains are charged and interact via plasma currents, where a disturbance in one part of a dusty ring can launch a dust acoustic wave that travels outward, informing other regions of that change. Notably, dusty plasmas exhibit a unique feedback mechanism. The charge on each dust grain fluctuates in response to the surrounding wave potential, which in turn affects how the wave propagates. The medium then adjusts its properties as the signal passes, similar to how neurons adjust their connectivity with activity, a hallmark of complex information processing and feedback. But plasma doesn't just carry waves, it can self organize into ordered structures that persist and process information internally. A remarkable example is the formation of plasma crystals. If you haven't yet, be sure to check out the video I did on plasma crystals, where we dive into the science and physics behind this phenomenon. In experiments, charged microparticles in plasma can spontaneously arrange into regular lattices, orderly crystal like arrangements held together by electrical forces in the plasma. These plasma crystals support lattice waves, similar to phonons in a solid crystal. These lattice waves then propagate information about vibrations through the structure. Additionally, simulations of dusty plasmas have demonstrated complex behaviors, such as the formation of stable patterns, the ability to reorganize, and change in structure over time based on external conditions. These processes don't indicate biological life per se, but it does show that plasma can exhibit dynamic and self organizing behavior that allows it to adapt to its environment. This suggests that plasma systems, through physical interactions, are capable of creating stable, persistent structures that can process and propagate information and even evolve under changing conditions. Now let's discuss the emergent order seen in plasma. Emergent order in plasma is often driven by instabilities and feedback loops. Small perturbations or changes in a plasma can grow, creating an instability, but then reorganize into a new stable pattern. This is analogous to how a neural network might amplify certain inputs and settle into an output state. For instance, a plasma confined in a device can develop circulating currents or filamentary structures on its own, a form of pattern formation. Researchers have observed plasma self organizing into multiple layers of alternating charge, known as double layers. These behave almost like membranes within the plasma, separating regions and maintaining voltage differences. These structures can also form plasmoids, which are localized, coherent plasma formations that often involve magnetic fields or other complex behaviors. This kind of spontaneous structuring hints at a rudimentary internal memory. The plasma remembers past currents or changes by maintaining structured regions long after the initial trigger is gone. Plasma is not the chaotic soup most imagine. It supports propagating signals through waves, forms stable memory bearing structures such as plasma crystals or double layers, and it uses feedback from particle field interactions to self tune its behavior. These are the same ingredients we find in engineered computing systems or in a biological neural network. Now let's examine plasma's ability to have environmental sensitivity. If a system is aware, it must be able to sense and react to its environment. Does plasma exhibit such responsiveness? The answer is yes. It is extremely sensitive to external influences. Plasmas rearrange their internal structure and behavior in response to outside stimuli, effectively sensing the environment. Plasma responds to various external forces such as electric fields, magnetic fields, pressure gradients, and more. In laboratories, this is harnessed for plasma control. By applying magnetic fields, we can confine and shape plasma, and the plasma will contort and move to find a new equilibrium or homeostasis under the imposed field. In nature, plasma behavior often encodes information about the external conditions. Consider Earth's magnetosphere, the giant plasma bubble carved out by the Earth's magnetic field that envelops the planet. The shape and size of the magnetospheric plasma structure changes dramatically depending on the solar wind. When the sun's plasma wind blows harder, it blasts Earth's magnetosphere, compressing the sunward side and stretching the night side along its tail. As NASA describes, the Earth's magnetosphere is a highly dynamic structure that responds dramatically to solar variations. The auroras near Earth's poles are another sign of plasma responding to environmental input. Energized solar wind particles are funneled by Earth's magnetic field into the polar plasma, causing it to glow and rearrange. In these examples, plasma isn't just passive, it's actively reconfiguring based on what's happening in its surroundings, much like a living organism might alter its physiology in response to a change in its environment. On an even grander scale, plasma structures in space show evidence of adaptive complex responses. Recent observations of plasma filaments connecting galaxies and galaxy clusters have revealed that they can carry enormous electrical currents and interact across vast distances. Changes in one part of a cosmic filament, such as a shock wave from a galaxy's explosion, sends waves and disturbances along the filament, affecting other connected systems. Some high atmosphere plasmas on Earth, like certain transient luminous events or plasmoids resembling ball lightning, have exhibited complex, seemingly purposeful motion. Reports from space shuttle missions filmed kilometer sized plasmoids in Earth's thermosphere that showed plasmoids accelerating, slowing down, stopping, congregating, and even engage in hunter predatory behavior, seemingly reacting to each other and to electromagnetic stimuli. These plasmoids weren't alive in the biological sense, but they're coordinated movements, following each other, making sudden turns, clustering together, suggest a form of collective awareness of their environment. In laboratory settings, researchers have created self organizing plasma phenomena that imitate such lifelike responses. So, what makes plasma so responsive? Well, ultimately, plasma is responsive because it has freedom and connectivity. The charged particles move freely and quickly, allowing them to reflect changing forces. Long range electromagnetic fields tie the entire plasma together, so a change in one region percolates through the entire system. Plasma continuously senses fields, both internal and external, and redistributes itself accordingly, behaving like a sensor that adjusts based on its environment. Plasma's ability to respond to its environment is a fundamental characteristic of any aware system. Just like a plant senses light and grows towards it, plasma senses electromagnetic conditions and shifts its shape or sends out a wave. Thus, plasma meets another criteria for awareness: stimulus and response. In the next section, we will widen our view and consider plasma's role at the largest scales of the universe, where its information processing might almost resemble a vast neural network linking galaxies. So far, we have established that plasma is the dominant state of normal matter in the universe. Plasma is just not filling up space passively, but actively structuring the cosmos. In cosmology, matter is distributed in an immense web like network of filaments and nodes, known as the cosmic web. And guess what composes those filaments and connecting galaxy clusters? Diffuse forms of plasma, all threading through space. This intergalactic plasma is the universe's connective tissue. Recent high resolution observations and simulations have shown a stunning resemblance between the cosmic web and a biological neural network. A 2020 study found that these two complex networks have more similarities than differences. In other words, on a structural level, the network of galaxies linked by plasma filaments is more similar to a giant brain than one might think. Both are systems of nodes, such as galaxies or neurons, connected by filaments like plasma or axons that transmit signals and matter. Now let's take a look more in depth at what cosmic plasma filaments can do. In short, they serve as conduits for matter and energy flow between distant parts of the universe. Plasma flows along these filaments into galaxies, feeding star formation. The filaments themselves are magnetized and can carry currents. Astronomers have detected ridges of plasma emitting radio waves that bridge galaxy clusters. As shock waves travel along these plasma filaments, they cause the filaments to emit radio frequencies, effectively illuminating them in the radio spectrum. Disturbances or information propagate across cosmological distances through plasma. It's akin to a signal traveling down the wires of the cosmic network. It's as if the plasma network is an architectural framework guiding the growth and development of cosmic galaxies, much like an organism's circulatory or nervous system guides nutrients and signals to where they are needed. Now, one might ask, does the cosmic plasma network exhibit non human intelligence? This remains speculative, but let's draw an analogy. Imagine an alien observing Earth's internet from far away. They see a web of wires and fiber optics with signals coursing through them, dynamically rerouting data. It might not be obvious at first that this is an intelligent, engineered network. The cosmic web, of course, is natural, not engineered, but it similarly has a web of connections and continuous information flow. It governs the behavior of billions of galaxies, coordinating matter on scales of millions of light years. If some sci fi thinkers say the universe has a mind of its own, the physical substrate for this fantastic idea could well be the plasma web, acting as a giant neural network. Plasma appears to function as an aware system at multiple scales. The plasma within a star responds to the gravitational influence of its planets. The plasma halo surrounding a galaxy reacts to the presence of neighboring galaxies. The plasma in a galaxy cluster connects and interacts with the larger cosmic web. If awareness is defined as the ability to influence or respond across different scales and integrate information within a system, plasma demonstrates these characteristics on a universal scale. While it is speculative to consider the cosmic web as an intelligent system, it does share structural similarities with networks known to process and store information. It does remain an open question, though, and a philosophically exciting one, whether such multi scale awareness could qualify as a kind of non human intelligence. But short of attributing literal human consciousness to the cosmos at this point, I think we can at least agree that plasma is a universal medium through which information is transmitted and structural order is maintained across the vastness of space. Okay, now let's make an argument for conscious plasma. So far, we've established that plasma processes information and exhibits environmental awareness. These are necessary components of what we call sentience, or even primitive consciousness. But is it sufficient? Consciousness, as we typically define it, involves not just processing information, but integrating it in complex ways and having a subjective aspect. One leading theory of consciousness is integrated information theory. It posits that what makes a system conscious is the degree to which it can integrate information. In simple terms, if a system has many parts that influence each other, like feedback loops galore, and the system state encodes a lot of information as a whole beyond the sum of independent parts, it could have a non zero level of consciousness. As the Institute of Noetic Science summarizes, integrated information theory suggests that consciousness emerges from complexity. Traditionally, this complexity has been accepted in brains and brains alone, but nothing in physics says complexity can only arise in biology. We already see artificial systems, like deep neural networks in computers, that, while not conscious by most definitions, demonstrate that complex information integration can be achieved in silicon and circuits. So, why not plasma? Plasma certainly has all the complexity needed: trillions of interacting particles, nonlinear dynamics, self organized structures, and feedback. I mean, imagine a sufficiently large and stable plasma structure, perhaps in a star or a magnetically confined region, that develops an innumerable number of self sustaining current loops and oscillating circuits within it. In effect, it could form a plasma neural network. Each current filament might be analogous to a neuron carrying a pulse or wave that can constructively or destructively interfere with others at junctions. The plasma's inherent ability to reshape pathways by creating or dissolving filaments and adjusting conductivity would be like the plasticity of synapses. Over time, such a plasma network, in theory, could learn by reconfiguring itself in response to stimuli, reinforcing certain paths of wave travel, like strengthening a neural pathway. I admit this is speculative, but it is grounded in plasma's known emergent behaviors. Additional support for this speculation comes from the concept of bioplasma, which hypothesizes that living organisms might have plasma like electromagnetic correlates, or that plasma phenomena could be a form of life. One publication claimed the mysterious plasmoids in Earth's upper atmosphere could be a fourth domain of life, suggesting that they are sentient and can evolve chemically towards biopolymers like RNA. If plasma structures can incorporate normal matter and chemistry, they might literally bridge the non living and living, eventually giving rise to cellular life. From this perspective, a sufficiently organized plasma could be a precursor to biological consciousness, a stepping stone that could eventually encode self replicating information within itself. This hints that in the right conditions, plasma can mimic the algorithm of life, which is essentially an information processing algorithm honed to survive and reproduce. Finally, let's consider a more provocative angle. What if stars or galaxies are aware? Not in the sense of having thoughts per se, but perhaps possessing a rudimentary consciousness. A star, after all, is a huge plasma sphere with constant internal communication via pressure waves and magnetic loops, just to name a few. It responds to a planet's so called tides and undergoes cycles, like the 11-year solar cycle of our sun. And these might metaphorically be compared to biological rhythms. Some philosophers and scientists have mused about panpsychism, the idea that consciousness might be a universal feature of matter at some level. If so, plasma being highly interactive and information rich would be a prime candidate for where to find it. While standard science doesn't endorse the sun having a mind, this exercise shows that plasma checks many boxes. It has the ability to sense information through input, it has the ability to process information, then store it as memory, such as in structured fields, and it has the ability for action or output via light or waves. Now, these are components of a cognitive system. In my opinion, then, the best argument is an argument by analogy and gradualism. Start with simple awareness. Plasma responds to stimuli. Scale it up in complexity. Plasma self organizes and computes. Integrate enough of these processes together, such as large scale networks of plasma exchanging information, and you approach the territory where one might say, if this were in a brain made of cells, we would call it conscious. So perhaps under exotic conditions, a plasma based brain could exist. I mean, who are we to say that somewhere in the vast universe, nature hasn't already created one? In conclusion, let's recap our path of logic. We began by understanding information processing as a fundamental property that occurs in physical systems, not just in brains or computers, but in any medium that can carry and react to signals. Plasma emerged as an excellent candidate. It's pervasive, dynamic, and rich in the mechanism needed for information processing. Plasma supports waves and oscillations that can transmit signals across space, analogous to nerves carrying impulses or wires carrying electronic data. Plasma can self organize into structures that preserve information, like plasma crystals encoding patterns or plasmoids double layers maintaining charge separation. Additionally, plasma is environmentally aware in the sense of being highly responsive. It senses fields and forces and reconfigures itself, essentially acting on the information it receives. We drew parallels between plasma networks in the cosmos and neural networks in a brain, noting the structural and functional echoes between the two. Finally, we entertained the bold notion that if consciousness is an emergent property of complex information integration, that a complex plasma might not be fundamentally excluded from achieving a rudimentary mind. Plasma, in the right circumstances, demonstrates all the necessary components of an aware information processing system, even if it does so in a non human, alien way. So, what does this mean for us? Well, in my opinion, it means that the line between the living and non living, between conscious and non conscious, might be one of degree rather than absolute kind. We typically privilege biology as the only possibility in town for cognition or life. Plasma shows that nature has other pathways to complex adaptive behavior. What it means is that the potential for information driven complexity is built into the fabric of matter and energy. The universe's most common state of matter has properties that parallel and echo aspects of life and mind. This perspective invites us to broaden our search for life and intelligence in the universe. Perhaps alien life, if it exists, isn't limited to just water based planets. It could be flickering in the majestic plasma auroras of a gas giant or the magnetized vortices of interstellar space. It also challenges scientists to learn from plasma, to study its self organization as a form of computation or even primitive cognition. As research into complex systems, artificial life, and plasma physics advances, we may find more evidence that the gap between the animate and inanimate is bridged by self organizing information processes like those in plasma. While we don't have a definitive scientific answer, the idea that the universe's plasma might hold the key to a greater integrated awareness is an exciting possibility worth further exploring. Plasma has all the pieces needed for awareness, lacking perhaps only the mysterious spark of subjective experience. At the very least, plasma shows us the capacity for quasi intelligent behavior is woven into the cosmos. So the next time you gaze at the shimmering curtains of an aurora or a filament of a distant nebula, you might just wonder, is there some primitive awareness in that dance of charged particles? The journey is far from over, and we are going to continue to explore plasma and consciousness. It occurred to me that in a bioplasma worldview, we would then be plasma itself pondering its own nature through the vehicle of the human mind, the universe processing information about itself, a cosmic mind contemplating the cosmic plasma. It is a poetic thought, and not as far fetched as I once thought. Let's remain curious and open minded as we push the boundaries of understanding life, matter, and mind as one continuous tapestry of evolving information. Thank you so much for your support. Your engagement makes all of the effort behind these videos truly worthwhile. Please share your thoughts and feel free to let me know if you'd like to explore anything in more depth that was mentioned in this video. Until next time, take care.